As we sit here, the final week of June, we're about 6 weeks from the official start of the 2021 East Carolina football season. Right now, very excited to be joined by defensive coordinator Blake Harrell. Coach, welcome into the show.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Appreciate your time this morning. Fired up about Pirate football. So just let's go back to January of 2020. Little did we know, what was going to transpire in that about a month and a half later. But March of 2020, things got shut down there in mid-March. You didn't have a spring ball. The summer wasn't what it typically would be. And, just everything was discombobulated. Just talk about the craziness of your first year running the defense with the Pirates.
Yeah, January 2020 seems like forever ago, but I guess it's really not that far back. It's in the rearview mirror, and thank goodness that COVID is getting behind us for sure. But, it was we had a great first month here, and then kind of like you said, we got entered the pandemic, and it wasn't ideal for installing a defense and installing some new things we were doing defensively and getting to know players. And but I thought our staff and our players did a great job of dealing with the circumstances. We always say control the controllables, and our players did that. They controlled what they could control, did a good job of picking up on new terminology, new schemes, just new ways of doing things, and did a good job of carrying that throughout the summer and into last fall. And I think you saw through the fall last year that early on you saw some things that we wanted to be identity-wise, and by the end of the season you saw that culture and that identity piece of what we want to do defensively, what Coach Houston has been building here for the last couple of years. You really saw that coming along now in the last couple of ball games there. So was really excited about where we're going, and really just had a great spring, and the kids are fired up, got a lot of juice and energy right now, and just really excited about this coming fall. And just it's all coming together finally, of just comparing this summer to last summer, where our players are, not only mentally knowing the defense, knowing the game, but also physically being able to train here at Big John and just being around each other and just being in such a better place than we were a year ago. So excited about 2021. 2020 was a good year, just but glad it's behind us too at the same point, same time, and moving on. So
before we dive in more to the here and the now, you talk about the challenge of implementing a defense under in a pandemic.
Right.
Just how much did that hold you back? You're not having those 15 spring practices, not having the face-to-face meeting time. I know you did your best to you used Kahoot, you used all the FaceTime and technology to your advantage. But just talk about how much of your defensive scheme and everything you wanted to implement were you able to implement?
Well, it's like you said, anytime you're trying to install or teach through Zoom, through FaceTime, and little Kahoot quizzes that we try to do and those type of things, it can be challenging, and you may not have someone's full attention, or, that you may lose them at a certain point, or they don't have a chance to ask a question or get on the board, and you may walk through it, talk through it. We talk about all the different ways there is to learn, and you talk about it, you show video of it, you go walk through it, you draw it on the board, and then you review the video from practice. So you never had those opportunities to do that last year, with just being the 15 spring practices. And, beyond that, learning how kids, as a teacher, learning how kids, their best environment for learning and what they do best. Okay, this kid needs some individual attention. This player needs to come in and he needs to write it down. This player needs a handout. And so you never really had that opportunity to kind of find out the uniqueness of each individual. Zoom kind of prohibits you from doing that sometimes. It does, limit to what you want to do during the season, and limit you to what you want to do with your package. And, we were such hey, let's install slow and get going. And then, when the Marshall game got canceled and we had a little pause in the middle of camp there, it was really like we had to start back over. Then we had to kind of rush it all in and get ready for UCF. So it was kind of a start, stop, which was a buzz killer, so to speak, for anybody. And was that certainly for us, because each day, I joke around with buddies now and even our players, you never knew what the next day was going to hold, whether the season was going to get canceled, whether the season was still on, whether you're going to practice, who was going to test positive that day, what it may have been. So each day just to get through the day was a success. And I think to play a football season in a pandemic is a success. And I think, our kids handled it really well looking back, and our coaching staff did a great job of just keeping our young men in a good place. And the fact that at the end of the season you're finishing strong says a whole lot.
Now, entering the program, obviously a very strong familiarity with you and Coach Houston from previous institutions, and Roy Tesh, Trip Weaver, who had been coached by Coach Houston up in the mountains at TC Robertson High School. So just talk about that familiarity, and then fast forwarding now after your first year running the defense, you have Tim Dowse coming in, focusing on defensive end, outside linebackers, and then also special teams coordinator.
Yeah, so I think we've got an awesome staff, in the whole building, not just defensively, but in the whole building. And Coach Houston's done an awesome job of assembling those guys, and he's always been good at that everywhere I've been. And since I've always known him, he's really good at judging character of people and getting the right people on the bus and getting them in the right seat. So he's done a great job with that. And as you mentioned, working with Roy Tesh and Trip Weaver before, made an easy transition for me as far as just we had some familiarity, and hey, this is how we did it when we were at this place, or here's how we did it before at this place. Let's go back to doing it that way, or let's recall here and recall there. So Trip and Roy have been awesome from that standpoint. And Steve Ellis is he's a joy to have around every day and does a great job with our players and just kind of sets the tempo for every day and brings a lot of good ideas to the meeting room. And then, as you mentioned, Tim Dowse is finding ways to make us better, and just some things he's added since he's been here this spring, and just a great addition to our defensive staff in there. So, and our support staff. I mean, we have an analyst now that we've hired who's with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, who was on offense. So we've got Matt Sims in there who's sees the film a little bit differently than defensive guys. So it's kind of nice to have guys in the room that maybe you haven't been out around all your life that kind of see things differently, so that we can talk about new thoughts, new schemes, new ways of doing things that can make us even better this fall.
I'll tell you what, bringing Coach Dowse in, he had been a defensive coordinator at a couple of previous stops, also a special teams coordinator.
Right.
So adding that kind of experience was very impressive. Excellent hire by Coach Houston, and certainly says a lot about East Carolina football. And Coach Houston, because I know Coach Dowse referenced his meetings with Coach Houston at clinics and conferences down through the years, and say, hey, that's a guy that I'd like to work for. But you mentioned Steve Ellis, and one of the things that Coach Ellis brought, if you follow East Carolina football on social media, you see the sharp mentality. That's something that's
right,
often referenced. So just talk about that.
Yeah, Coach Ellis, every day we'll be out there stretching. He is going at those DBs just with a, hey, you better get your mind right. You better be ready to practice like a pro. Sharp mentality, just the toughness and playing with edge, and that's how we want to play defensively. And really with our whole program is play with an edge, play with the sharp mentality that, hey, we ain't out here just to kind of go through the motions. We out here to eat. We're hungry. And that's the way we got to play, and if to give ourselves a chance to win ball games. So he's been great from that standpoint of just putting that mindset, not only with our DBs and our corners, but it's kind of carried throughout our whole football team, and it's became contagious. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's start taking a look at some of the personnel. We'll start off with the defensive line. Last year, the defensive line was extremely young, but some very talented pieces. Just talk about some of the things that you saw out of those guys last fall. Guys like Elijah Morris coming as a walk-on and earning a scholarship, right, and so on.
Yeah, excited about those guys up front with their hands down. I mean, like you said, they were young guys and they got better each and every week. And, they're still going to be freshmen on the field, but they're second-year players. So just excited to see how much they grow from year one to year two. And you look at any program across the country, and you look at freshmen, and then you look at them as a second-year player, and there's a huge change, not only with their body, but just kind of how they understand the game. Now they're not in a high school mindset anymore. They're in a college mindset. They're in, college setting as far as in the meeting rooms, understanding exactly what their assignment is, what the defense really entails. So I think our players are really taking hold of that right now. Just taking not what's my job, but what are we trying to do with each defensive call. And as you mentioned, Elijah Morris is, last year as a walk-on, great story, and earned a scholarship. Ended up starting ball games for us, and he's really developed his body this spring and changed his body this summer. Where I think we're going to see Elijah even excel more this coming fall. But those guys up front, D'Angelo McKinney, Rick DeBreu, really excited to have those guys back and just being older guys as well. I mean, Rick's has got as much twitch as anybody on our football team and can get off the rock, and just really excited about what he brings. And then the young guys too, like you mentioned, Xavier McIver, and Deontay Johnson, Surratt Ware, those guys, just kind of excited that they're finally out of year one, getting into year two. Jason Shuford, and excited to see them this fall.
Yeah, you talk Rick DeAbreu. I specifically recall the Navy game with the low capacity. Obviously, I was sitting down low and just watching Rick DeAbreu get off the football and wreak havoc and make some tremendous plays. Really stand out.
Yeah, he did. And then that game, I think you forced a couple fumbles or some, quarterback mess point there. Just gave him some problems, and that's the things he can do. And he may play on the edge a little bit this year, play inside a little bit. So just kind of as he gets older, understands the defense a little better, he's able to play multiple positions and do multiple things, so we can put him in the best situations to be successful on Saturdays.
One of the points of emphasis during the offseason with recruiting was finding an edge rusher or two. I know transfer from Southeast Missouri State, Bryant Purtle, and talk about him and some of the other guys you're counting on in that role.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing we've done was within our program, we moved a tight end over to defense in Jeremy Lewis. And he just adds some athleticism for us at the rush outside linebacker position, who's at tight end, you're involved about, whatever part of the offense. When you're at rush, you're involved every snap. So just excited. He made a lot of plays this spring, whether it's a run game or rushing the passer. He was able to use his athleticism to beat some offensive tackles there this spring and cause some havoc and create some chaos in the backfield there. So excited about him. And then the other guys growing up as well, Emmanuel Hickman, doing a good job, just kind of maturing, being an older guy, working like an older guy, developing his body. So those are the two guys that's really stood out so far this spring and this summer, of just moving in the right direction. And we still expect Demir Faison and Chad Stevens and, those guys to keep coming along and keep playing some meaningful snaps for us. Kareem Stinson is another guy that will be there. And Xavier Smith is a guy that played inside backer for us last year and will continue to do that, but you might see him lined up on the edge as well. So, if you put him and Jeremy Lewis on the edge, that's two athletic kids that offenses are going to have to worry about and game plan for, and may get some offensive tackles some problems.
At that next level, let's start off with the inside backers. Bruce Bivens, also Xavier Smith. Those two have played a lot of football.
Yeah, and Xavier, Bruce, Aaron Ramser, Miles Berry, and then we've added a transfer, Jacoby Simpson. He was at TCU, then junior college. All those guys were older guys. I mean, they're fourth, fifth, 6-year players who, they carry themselves like that too. So, and anytime a guy's going into his last year, you always see change of how their mindset. And I think Bruce and Aaron right now, going into their last year of eligibility, they've kind of prepared themselves, differently. They're in the meeting rooms every day, getting extra work in, getting extra film study in, whether it's just watching our scheme, watching opponents, or watching just some NFL guys and NFL tape of who they want to model their game after. So they're certainly putting the work in. Really excited about those guys being field generals out there with Xavier. He does a great job at that and brings a good energy to our team. Bruce is as fast as anybody we have in 10 yards. We talk about that all the time. I don't know what he runs in the 40, but from 10 yards from where he stands to get to the quarterback, he can get there pretty quick. The ball carries pretty fast. Aaron Ramsey's a guy we need to keep healthy, and just if we can do that, Aaron's got a natural ability to play linebacker there and find the ball carrier, and done really good. And excited about Miles as well and Jacoby. So, and then we got some young guys there at linebacker: Taylor Jackson, Eric Doctor. That are, they were freshmen last year, and they keep coming along and give us some good depth there.
You talk about getting to the quarterback fast. The guy that can certainly do that and wreak some havoc is Jairo Wilson. His athleticism, 6'3", a little over 200 pounds. I know last season he was just over 200 pounds. I'm sure he's put on some pounds now, getting in there with Big John. But with that athleticism, a play that stands out in my mind is the play he made against SMU in the season finale when he stripped the guy.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to watch there. And Jair's, everything our program's about, Jair Wilson's about. He's, like you said, long, gives people problems on the edge, and then when you bring him on the blitz there, he finds a way to get to the quarterback, and he finds a way to strip the football out, whether it's SMU, Tulsa, wherever it may be. He's always punching that thing and getting it out and doing a nice job there. I think coaches even letting him switch jersey numbers to the new zero, so he's going to be the first Pirate in program history to wear zero. So he's certainly deserving of that. And then the other guy out there that's back that played, a couple of years ago, had a lot of starts, is Gerard Stringer. Similar body type to Jaira, long, rangy, can run. So having both those guys out there on the edge, it could give us, some advantages there, or put them on, in there together for some packages. Really excited about that.
All right, tell us about the guys that Steve Ellis and Trip Weaver are coaching up on the back end. You have guys that have been in the program, like Jaquan McMillan, who just had a tremendous start to his Pirate career. Malik Fleming's certainly shown some good signs. And then you have a transfer like DJ Ford.
Yeah, so I say that all the time. Like, we are starting to look like the rest of the American teams in our conference, especially with our stand-up guys right now that are older. They've been in the weight room for a couple of years, and they play like that too. So, whether it's Warren Saba, Juwan Powell, Sean Dorso's back, started a bunch of games last year. So we've got some experience back there. And you mentioned DJ Ford, who was at North Carolina and started games there and did a really nice job this spring fitting in, understands the scheme, understands the system. And he's an older guy who plays like an older guy who's played a lot of snaps. So excited about what he's bringing to our defense. And then, at corner, I think you mentioned Malik Fleming, Nolan Johnson, Jaquan McMillan. Those are three guys that we consider all three of them starters, and feel comfortable with all three of those guys, what they can do. And we got to find a way to, we talked a little bit about packages earlier with Jair and Gerard. We got to find, some ways to get those guys on the field as well back there. And I think, Julius Wood is another guy we brought in from the junior college that we're pretty excited about. And athleticism, another long guy that we look forward to seeing him this fall.
One of the things your team did pretty well at last season, creating some miscues, forcing some turnovers. So just talk about the emphasis you guys place on that.
Yeah, so the big thing is we say it's all about the ball. Coach Houston just actually bought me a new for our meeting rooms. We now have a little ball strip. It's kind of a little platform with a ball on it, so that as the kids walk by, they can just punch the ball out, slat the ball out. So just kind of focus on that. And I think anytime you focus on a part of the game, you're going to see it show up. And we certainly did last fall. The stats show, hey, you win the turnover battle. There's 90% of the time you win the game. So that's what we want to keep focusing on. So we'll focus on, hey, it's all about the ball, creating turnovers, whether it's getting to the quarterback, stripping the ball out, picking the ball off in the air. And it takes everybody. It's not just the DB being in the right spot, but it's the D lineman getting pressure on him. So we always say it's we show clips to our guys beginning the meetings. WWKMD, what would Khalil Mack do? Khalil Mack's not just satisfied with getting a sack. Khalil Mack wants to get a strip sack. So we it's kind of a little neat teaching point we focus on for each meeting there.
Coach, a few minutes ago, you referenced on some of the growth of the defensive line. Obviously, you're seeing it at all three levels of the defense, but just up front, in years past, defensive line has been a bit undersized. But looking at a picture from last fall, and then looking at a picture during spring ball, I thought, holy cow, these guys have really transformed their bodies. So just talk about that a little more specifically, as far as some of the weight guys have put on and the growth they've made strength wise.
Well, Elijah Morris is probably the one that's put on some really good weight, and just it looks like a guy that's a college football player now instead of a high school kid walking in day one. We talked about D'Angelo earlier and Manny Hickman earlier, guys, and Rick. Those are three guys that's been in the program, been in a college weight room, and now they've had a whole year to train. So that's been nice to see. And Xavier McIver and Deontay Johnson, Javen McCray, those are guys that aren't freshmen anymore and are looking good and really excited about what they're going to do this fall.
Early last season, the run defense wasn't as good as we would have liked for it to be, but just as the season wore on, you saw teams in short yardage situations start to throw the football a little bit. Like SMU comes to mind in that season finale. I know there was at least one, if not a couple, fourth down stops. So just talk about the emphasis on stopping the run, and because I know this year, right out of the gates, you're playing App State, who that's what they pride themselves on.
Oh, no question. Then I think the fourth down stop that we all top of our minds is Juwan Powell. There's 4th and 1. They're going for it on the own side of the 50. It may be in one of the bigger plays of the year defensively. They go for it 4th and 1. We do a great job up front, building the wall, and Juwan Powell comes downhill and gets a tackle for a loss. So everything we do each and every week starts with stopping the run. And that's kind of what we focus on, what we build upon, and I think as the year went along, we did a better job focusing on that, taking that away, and trying to make people, like you said, throw the football in situations where they may not want to do it. And we'll continue to do that. I think we'll get even better at it this fall. We did a better job at it this spring of just creating some penetration up front, creating some negative plays, and doing a better job stopping the run. So that's what we got to continue to focus on. And you mentioned App State. That's certainly who they want to be. They want to be a top 15 team in the nation for in rushing, and we want to be a top 10 team, 15 team in the nation for defensive rushing. So defensive rush stats. So it should be a good battle. We know we got to take that away from them. We know we got to make them want to throw the ball. And I think you see that in a couple games last year that they played. The Marshall game comes to mind. Marshall made them, took the run game away from them and made them throw the football, and Marshall ends up winning that game. So we kind of want to take that same mindset into that game on September 2nd in Charlotte.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And a couple more things for you, Coach, and we'll wrap it up. But, going into year two, having those 15 spring practices, having a normal summer and fall camp, just talk about what's an area or two. Obviously, you want to see improvement across the board. That goes without saying. But, what's one or two areas that we just absolutely need to see some improvement in?
Well, I think you kind of hit on a couple of them already. One is just being consistent and stopping the run. If we can go in there and hold somebody to 100 yards rushing, I know you play different teams every week, and Navy, if you hold them to 100 yards rushing, everybody's doing jumping jacks. But you got to be able to shut the run game down and make them do things they don't want to normally do, regardless of who you're playing in our league right now. So that's number one for me. And then the number two thing, like you said, hey, when it's time for them to throw the ball, we got to be able to get to the quarterback and create some sacks. So those are two things we're focusing on. And we'll continue to hit on, what we want to be: turnovers, be great on third down, create negative plays, tackles for loss, sacks, those type of things. Because those things can help us win games. It's not just about, looking good, being fancy, whatever it may be. Those translate to winning football games, and that's what we want to be defensively.
Final thing for you. A few minutes ago, you were talking about how we finally are beginning to look like an American Athletic Conference football team in the uniform and have the size and athleticism, speed that we need. So just, year one for you in the AAC after moving up from Kennesaw State. I know you said ball is ball, but, like what were some of the things that you were maybe surprised by, or maybe not so surprised by? Like what was as anticipated making that transition to East Carolina and the AAC?
You know, the AAC is a very good football conference. I mean, it's, you know, like we say, it should be the Power Six instead of the Power Five, and the AAC can certainly go hold its own. You've seen that with Cincinnati and Georgia last year, and there's some good football teams in this conference, and there's guys in this conference who are long and can run, and are good football players, and probably play a lot of Power Five schools. So that's, you know, we're getting closer and closer to that every day, that we can fit in with those other guys. So I think the biggest, you know, if I had to look back at it and say, hey, what's the one thing that kind of stood out, is the speed and the athleticism in this conference is probably even better than you anticipate going in. But I think we're closing the gap on that quickly.
Appreciate your time this morning, Coach. I know June's obviously you're always going to have camps and it's going to be busy, but this year it's even more so with the camps and, you know, recruiting being even more spotlighted because of everything that's going on in the last 16 months. But I appreciate you carving out a half hour for us, and we look forward to having you back on down the road.
That's great. I appreciate your time.
This is East Carolina Hall of Famer and All-American linebacker Jody Schultz, and you are listening to the Sports Objective Podcast, the unofficial podcast of the Pirates.